Goblin launch detected.
This video is sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc. with free weekly content and free shipping on orders over $150. You can save 5% site-wide by using the promo code MTGMudsta. And 401 Games, Canada's one-stop shop for trading cards, board games, and hobby supplies. They've got an amazing loyalty program and an easy-to-use and robust buy list. And if you use the promo code MTGMudsta, your first purchase of MTG Sealed and Singles will be 5% off. If you're looking for a direct way to help the channel, please consider joining my Patreon and becoming a member of the generic Goblin Gang. Hey gang, and welcome back. Today's game has Matt, Arja, and John joining me. Matt is playing his newly made Will Scion of Peace deck, keeping Hengate Pathway, Azorius Signet, Vanish into Eternity, Baneslayer Angel, and 3 planes. I am taking Magus Lucea Kane out for a spin, keeping Spitfire Lagak, Nexos, Island, Polluted Delta, ramming up Excavator, Balagad Recovery, and a Mountain. Arja is rocking Ayli, keeping a Plains, Concealed Courtyard, Swamp, Outrider Encore, Timna the Weaver, Bajuka Bog, and Villis, Broker of Blood. Last but not least, John is playing Lathril, and his opener has Azuri Renegade Leader, Elvish Archdruid, Marwyn the Nurturer, Leaf-Crowned Visionary, Forest, Baron Moor, and a Bajuka Bog. Matt wins the die roll and starts us off. He draws and plays a Plains. I just play a Polluted Delta, sacrificing it and losing 1 to find a land. Arja draws and plays Concealed Courtyard. John draws and plays a tapped Bajuka Bog, which as it comes in, exiles my graveyard, i.e. my Polluted Delta, and he passes to Matt. Matt draws, playing a Mistgate Pathway. He then pays 2 for Azorius Signet and passes. I've got a Forest for turn, and then just cast Nexos and pass to Arja. Arja has a Swamp for turn, and then pays a white and a black for Ayli and passes to John. John just plays a Forest and ships the turn back to Matt. Turn 3 has Matt drawing and playing a Plains. He then casts Will, and once his commander resolves, passes to me. I play a Mountain for turn, and then pay 3 for Tunneling Geopede and pass to Arja. Arja draws and plays a Plains. He then casts Brina, and once she resolves, moves to combat. Arja swings Ayli at Matt and gets 2 +1/+1 counters onto his commander and draws a card from Brina. Matt then takes the hit, and after that, Arja passes, and during Arja's end step, John cycles Baron Moor, drawing a card. John draws and plays a Tainted Wood. He then plays Marwyn and passes to Matt. Matt draws and plays a Plains. Going to combat, Matt swings Will at John for 2, and he gets to draw a card from Brina, and Arja gets to put 2 +1/+1 counters onto Brina itself. John then takes the hit, and Matt passes. I draw and play an Island, dealing 1 to everyone with the landfall ability of my Geopede. I then cast Lucea Kane and go to combat, putting her +1/+1 counter onto herself, and pass to Arja after that. Arja draws and casts Timna in his main phase. He then moves to combat, and Matt casts Vanish into Eternity and targets Brina. Arja then decides to swing Ayli at Matt in retaliation. Matt takes the hit, and we then move to Arja's second main phase, where he draws a card and loses a life from Timna. He then follows up by playing a Silent Clearing, and then pays 1 for an Esper Sentinel. John draws and casts a Golgari Signet. He then plays an Elvish Archdruid and puts a counter onto Marwyn as it comes in. He then plays Terramorphic Expanse, cracking it and passing while searching. Matt draws and plays an Island. Going to combat, he swings Will at Arja, who takes the 2. After combat, Matt then plays a Walking Ballista for 2, and then casts a Felwar Stone and passes to me. I draw and play a Gruul Turf, floating a mana and then bouncing my Breeding Pool back to hand, and dealing 1 to everyone with the Geopede seeing a land come in. I then use Lucea Kane and my Nexos to help cast a Thassa's Intervention, putting 6 into the X, and I get a copy of it. I get to look at my top 6 and keep the 2 best, twice. And after that, I move to combat, putting the +1/+1 counter onto Lucea Kane and passing. Arja draws and plays a Starlight Sanctum for his land for turn. He then loses 6 life to pay for the Phyrexian mana cost of Keurig, and then loses another 4 life to play Gix. Moving to combat, Arja swings Ayli at Matt and Timna at John. Matt blocks the Walking Ballista and then sacrifices it, dealing 2 to Arja, and Timna then connects at John. Arja then draws 2 and loses 2 between Timna and Gix's abilities after combat. With nothing else, he passes. John draws and plays a Cabal Coffers. He then plays a Leaf Crown Visionary, adds a counter to Marwyn, and then casts Lathril, drawing a card off his Leaf Crown Visionary. He follows that up with the Heedless one, adding a counter to Marwyn, and then passing turn. Matt draws and plays a Plains. He plays Swiftfoot Boots, and then casts a Baneslayer Angel, and then pays to equip the boots onto the Angel. Going to combat, he swings the Angel at Arja and Will goes at me. We each take our hits, and Matt also pays a life to draw off of Gix. With nothing else, he passes. I draw and play Lotus Cobra, and then play an island for turn, making a mana from the Cobra and dealing 1 damage to all of my opponents from the Geopede. I then play an Oracle of Moldiah, and once it resolves, reveal my top card, and play an untapped Breeding Pool, taking 2, and get another floating mana and deal another 1. I then use the floating mana to cast Spellseeker, and as it comes in, I get to tutor for Open the Way, putting it to hand. Moving to combat, I then put a +1/+1 counter onto the Spellseeker and pass to Arja. Arja draws and goes to combat. He swings out at Matt, and Matt blocks Gix with Will, but takes the rest. Arja then loses 3 total from the draw triggers, but gains 3 life from lifelink, so it washes out and he ends up just drawing 3 cards. After combat, Arja then activates Gix to discard his hand and exile the top 11 of Matt's library. He gets Arcane Signet, Savine's Reclamation, Bounty Agent, Auriok Champion, Nykthos Paragon, Body of Knowledge, Ivory Tower, and Emergency Powers, plus some lands he can't use. He casts them all, and orders it so that Savine's Reclamation first, then Emergency Powers, then the Champion, and then everything else after that. He brings back Outrider Encore from the Reclamation, and responding to the Emergency Powers, I mana drain it. Arja's team then gets a +1/+1 counter from the Nykthos Paragon, and with all that done, Arja passes. John draws and plays a Forest. He then plays a Zuri, and Arja gains a life and adds more counters to his team. John then plays an Elderfang Venom and a Cultivator of Blades, putting counters onto it with Fabricate. Going to combat, John swings Lathril and the Heedless one at Matt. Matt takes the hit of both, and John makes 4 Elf Warrior tokens off of Lathril, plus pays a life to Gix to draw a card. He then passes after that. Matt draws and goes to combat. He swings the Baneslayer Angel at Arja, who takes the hit. Matt then activates Will in his post-combat main phase to reduce his spells by 5 colorless. He then plays an Inspiring Overseer and gains a life and draws a card. And Arja gains another from the Auriok Champion, which has the Nykthos Paragon pumping his board even more. After that, Matt then casts Elesh Norn, which wipes away most of my board. With the Praetor on the stack, John activates Azuri, and she then comes in, wiping away most of my board, and John's will die at the end of turn. Matt follows up with Rabble Rousing, and then a Nyx Fleece Ram, and passes. Moving to his end step, John's elves die on cleanup, and we all then lose 7 from the Elderfang Venom. I draw and get 7 colorless from the mana drain. I then use Lucea Kane to copy Open the Way and get 8 lands off of it. I then play Bala Ged Recovery and return Spellseeker to my hand. I then recast it, and it immediately dies, but I get to go and find Fascination off it first at least. With nothing else, I pass to Arja. Arja draws her turn, and then pays 1 to sacrifice the Silent Clearing, drawing another card. He then goes to combat, and swings out at me. Before damage, he sacrifices the Bounty Agent to gain 4, and gives 4 more counters to his team. This is enough that I die, and Arja then draws a card off of Gix and loses 1. In his second main phase, he then cashes in his hand again by activating Gix and discarding it, and this time exiling 9 cards off of Matt. He gets to play Basilisk Collar, Phial of Galadriel, and then Blatant Thievery, which, as it resolves, steals Elesh Norn and Marwyn. He then continues by casting Swords to Plowshares on the Baneslayer Angel, and then an Aven Mind Sensor, a Muldrifter, and Aminatu's Augury. The Augury gets him a Daru Spiritualist, Command Tower, Smothering Tithe, and Bolas's Citadel. With the Spiritualist out, and the Encore, he's essentially able to make infinite life by targeting the creatures and then sacrificing it to Ayli. With his combo out, Arja then passes, and we move to Jon's turn. Jon draws and plays a Skull Clamp, and then clamps away the Heedless One to deal 1 to everyone and draws 2. He then does the same to the Cultivator of Blades, and then casts a Desperate Green Sun Zenith, where X is 4. Unfortunately, he can only look at his top 4. He gets an Elvish Mystic, which dies immediately, but drains everyone for 1 at least. With nothing else, Jon passes, and Arja does the infinite life combo of Daru Spiritualist, Outrider Encore, and Ayli on his end step. He then activates Bolas's Citadel to kill Matt. As he's also gained a huge chunk of life, all of his creatures are now infinitely large thanks to the Nykthos Paragon, and since Matt's dead, we just move to Arja's turn, and he's able to swing out at Jon and win the game. Game review time. This video was 49 minutes and 56 seconds. I know in Standard that Gix has been making a lot of waves, but I think this game really highlighted how powerful he can be. Arja was able to activate him using that Curix ability to not have to pay all the mana since 7 is so steep, but he was getting so much value since he was drawing so many cards and was able to go that many deep into other people's libraries. He got very lucky with Matt's deck, which seemed to synergize pretty well with his, involving life gain, and as soon as that Nykthos Paragon resolved with the Auriok Champion, I think we were all done for. It was nice that we actually got to see so much of Matt's deck despite the fact that he didn't play any of it, and it seemed like he was missing a lot of his enablers. His deck seems to really want to gain a lot of life to help reduce the cost of spells, and he really didn't get to do any of that. He only activated Will once the Baneslayer was out, and all it really did was help reduce the cost of Elesh Norn. My Magus Lucea Kane deck was also pretty slow, and had to use my Spellseeker to go and find Open the Way. By the time I was actually able to start getting going, it was far too late, and as soon as I tutored for that Fascination, I knew I was done for, as no one was going to let me live to resolve it. It's a shame Jon didn't have more elves with Lathril out, as that pinging enchantment he has was pretty good. It was very punishing and dropped our life totals quite a bit, but by that point he really needed a lot more lords or a lot more elf tokens to really make an impact. This video wouldn't be possible without the help from my sponsors, Cool Stuff Inc., Multizone, Original Magic Art, and Alter Sleeves. But it definitely wouldn't be possible without the help from you, the viewers, and my patrons. So I just want to say thank you for watching, and to remember, friends are just opponents you haven't eliminated yet.